Ladies and gentlemen, Liquor Talk, new episode starts now. Welcome everybody to another edition of Liquor Talk, the podcast. And thank you for everybody joining me today, whether you're joining on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you join at. Today we have another dope conversation. Once again, I am your man, Victor, holding it down here in Florida. Joining me today, she is the lady of the matchmaking business, Mosaic Matchmaking, holding it down out of Texas. It's Miss Brooke. How you doing today?
Hey, Victor, thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm doing good and I'm excited about our conversation today.
Yes, I'm excited too. But before we get to that, I gotta give a few shout outs. First of all, shout out to everybody that hit me up on social media. I was kind of not feeling it. I had a rough past couple of days, and I had a whole bunch of people on Twitter reaching out to me like, "Hey, hang in there." So first of all, I want to give shout outs to y'all. Y'all are everything. Second of all, I want to shout out to the home team, Tampa Bay Lightning. They brought home the trophy. You know what I'm saying? My shirt finally got here. I would have been recorded, showed love, but know how ordering things is. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk to Miss Matchmaker. How's everything been going? How you holding up through this whole craziness that is going on through 2020?
Whew, 2020 has been a year like I would never have thought that I would have lived through this type of year. I will say though, through it all, my me starting this matchmaking company has been what's been keeping me sane. So we launched back at the Labor Day weekend in September. And starting around June, I really started hitting the pavement with getting all the admin and operation stuff for the business. And then once we launched, I've really been reaching out to people, having phone calls. So I'll say this, if I didn't have this business right now, I really don't know how I'd be staying sane.
I have to agree with you there because if I didn't have this podcast, if I didn't have
Yeah.
deep episodes of this podcast where I'm talking to different people, I wouldn't know how to stay sane either. All this
Yeah.
madness going on and
It,
stuff.
it's
But
too
talk to
much.
me, what is the matchmaking about business about?
Yeah. So really and truly, I got started because I love to just play matchmaker with my single friends. I mean, my friends can tell you that anytime I saw a single guy or single girl, I was always trying to figure out who can I match them up or connect them with. And so really and truly, like I had the passion for it. And I started looking at other matchmakers, seeing what type of industry was out there. And one of the things that really grabbed my attention was that a lot of matchmakers, there's about 1,600 matchmakers, by the way, in the United States, but only a very small percentage of them even have people of color, specifically Black and Brown people, as their clientele. And so I really found that there's a huge gap in the matchmaking market where the people of color are not even being really catered towards. And so that's where I came up with my specific niche of handling and catering my business towards matching people of color. And so that's kind of how I got started. Specifically, right now, I'm starting off in the DFW area because that's where I'm based. I'm based out of Dallas, but I'm already quickly seeing how this is a gap nationwide. So if all goes well, I'm looking to expand really quickly.
That's real. It's definitely a gap nationwide because even when preparing for this podcast, I was looking up other businesses and it's like
Right.
they don't have no people of color on there. I'm like, my
Right. I
goodness.
know. Not even when you're looking at their website, I'm like, y'all could have at least tried. Y'all could have at least found some brown faces to put in your stock photos. So I knew it was a huge gap. We even talked to people in our network here, and they were like, yeah, this is something I'd really be interested in. What I'm finding now, though, Victor, is also trying to educate the market because, like you mentioned, you hadn't really heard much about matchmaking, and that's true for a lot of people in our communities. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's like a dating app like match.com and stuff, but that's not what it is. It's really a personalized, curated dating process. So people can think of me as their dating concierge or a headhunter. And when they come to me, I'm walking alongside with them during that dating process and actually curating matches for them specifically to go on and introducing them.
Wow, interesting. So have you had any success stories so far from the match from or have you heard of other people's successes when using the matchmaking business?
Yeah, there's actually a ton of success stories. So for me, with me just getting started last month, I don't have a success rate calculated just yet because it takes time, but I'll give you a little bit about what that kind of indicates. So for me, I chose to measure my success by when I introduce someone to their match and they go on a date, is there mutual interest and do both of them want to pursue a second meeting? So that's one metric. And the other metric is looking at a 6 month perspective. After 6 months, is that match or that introduction, are they still together? A lot of people who have found success with matchmaking, just looking at the industry as a whole, are people who are really busy because obviously we all know that dating takes time. If you're going to really pursue people and get on dating apps, you got to devote a lot of time to that. It's exhausting. And so when you think of people who are business owners, are executives, directors, they may not have the time to invest. And so that's a lot of people who find success. Another time is also looking for people who are kind of in that demographic where they may have already been married before or have children. So they are looking for something very specific and they really don't have a lot of time to sit there and play games because they're not just thinking of things for themselves. They have a reputation on the line. They have their children to think about. They have their families to think about. So these are the people who are turning towards matchmakers and who are really having a lot of the success stories.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's good because I know people I know of. They quick to hop on Tinder
Yeah.
or Black or Plenty of Fish or OK Cupid. OK Cupid be asking 50 million
I
questions,
know.
and
I know.
sometimes it's like you generate based on percentages, but you'll say like 90%, but then you meet them in person, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. It is interesting. I was reading this book called Modern Romance, and it talked a lot about dating apps. One of the things is, like you mentioned, you're getting on a dating app and you're answering all these questions, and it's saying that it's going to match you with someone who's compatible. But you also kind of have to think about you're only going to be matched with or be seeing people who have that same app. So you have to think about that dating pool. It's already going to be limited. And even still, it was also they're playing devil's advocate because they say, people are on here saying all these preferences that they have, but when they're presented with the people with their preferences, it still doesn't work out, or really and truly, some of the preferences that they're saying aren't necessarily what they're looking for. So it's really interesting when you start looking at those dating apps.
Yes, yes. So now, what is the difference? What's the major difference between using the matchmaking service and just using a plain old regular dating app?
Yeah. So first and foremost, our service is specifically personalized. I am going to walk with you directly. A dating app, as we mentioned, you're sitting there, you're telling them your preferences, and you're on your own. Me, I am working with you, and not only am I having specific interviews with my clients, but I'm also thinking about what I'm picking up from them based on the things that are unsaid. Once COVID is over, my plan is to meet with these people in person in like their workspace, maybe a home, so I can pick up on what their lifestyle is. Those will give you big indicators on someone that may be compatible with them. Additionally, my process is very discreet. So instead of you having to get on there and post your photo, especially think about someone who's maybe an executive or director. You don't want to get up there and post your photo. You don't know who's going to come across your dating profile. You don't want your coworkers to look at your profile. So with me, I confidentiality is of most important. So if we do it to the point where even when I'm reaching out to a match for you, I may not even send your picture. So that is another huge benefit over a dating app.
So, what are these like blind dates you're basically setting up?
Well, it depends on the my client's level of comfort. So one thing, and this is really funny, but I was working with a lady, and she wants to be very confidential because she has a reputation. She's worked hard to build her career, and so before I send her on a date, I'll try to have a conversation. And I reach out to, the guys and I'll ask them, hey, I think you might be a good match for a lady I'm working with. Would you be interested in talking on the phone? And so once I get them, then I can, show them a quick picture. Like when if you and I are on a video call, I
Mhm.
could share a picture then. But I wouldn't send anything to them in Messenger so that they can screenshot it and circulate it. So that's kind of how I disguise it.
Okay. And do
Yeah.
you work with people on like dating tips and giving dating advice? Are you like also their coach as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that is another big piece of it because a lot of people who are looking for a matchmaker, they need help with the full process. And that's why I offer packages. So I am literally, if you need help on what should I wear after this date, how should I respond to this? How long should I wait to text this person back or invite them on a second date? So absolutely, I am a dating coach and all of the above when it comes to working with the client. It's really like, oh, I try to do a holistic approach to it. Even, checking in with them mentally, like, how are you doing in other aspects of your life? Because really and truly, that all is going to spill into your dating life.
Yes, yes, that
Yeah,
is. That definitely is
absolutely.
because sometimes people may need their dating life to pick up because the other parts of their life are just not
Yeah,
working out. So, do if you
absolutely.
see that, do you just tell somebody straight up now might not be a good time to date?
Man, I will tell you this. I am transparent. And I even before I start working with people, I let them know that because I believe that we have to have a honest and open relationship when I'm working with you. And I unfortunately have had to tell someone that I could not take them on as a client because they were not ready. They had too much stuff going on in their personal life. And I knew for me it was going to be a conflict working with them. And then two, I have to think about who I'm matching them with. And I'm like, I, in good faith, can't hook this person up on a date because I know that they're not ready. So in those cases, I either can recommend and do some date coaching, which is perfectly fine. Or, sometimes if it's a bad situation, I'll have to recommend maybe they should just check out going to therapy. And, like no bad stigma or anything. But to your point, I just want to make sure I'm real and transparent because there are some things that people need to check before they try to get out there and start dating for real. That's the other thing about me as a matchmaker specifically. I am looking to build intentional relationships. So, I'm not here for people who are playing games or want to test the waters. So before I want to make sure you're in a place where you can come with intentionality before I even start that process with you.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
So, how do you know if a person is just ready for it once you meet with them?
Yeah, so I asked them a couple of questions, and one of those is, what have you been doing to prepare yourself for long-term relationship? Why do you think you're ready for a long-term relationship? And then kind of dig back into their past and see like what type of lessons they've learned from maybe past mistakes or past interactions, or their previous dating experience. So there's a lot of questions that I asked around that, and also trying to get them self-reflection. And then before I even start matching them, it's about a month where we have a couple of different meetings, we're interacting. So I really get to know that person on a deeper level before I'm even sending people to them.
Wow. Now, do you
Yeah.
do this by yourself or do you have a whole team helping you?
So right now I am by myself. My husband, thankfully, he helps with the admin operation stuff. I couldn't do all this without him. So with him handling those types of that type of stuff, I'm able to focus on the actual logistics of the matchmaking business.
Mhm. So, how do where do people like from what you've seen, like where do people succeed in this? Like, like where do people where have you seen that people are very successful in matchmaking?
Yeah. So one of the things is I do tell them my expectations. You have to a couple of different things. I tell them that I want you to be responsive and I want to make sure you have time to dedicate to dating. So I can't send you a match and then it takes you 2 or 3 weeks to get back to them and set up a date. Or you're over here like, oh, I don't know. Let me think about that. No, I need you to be committed to the process. The other thing about that is I really want people to say, I ask them, if you continue down the road that you're on and you look up a year from now, because you haven't hired me or anything, would you be okay with being on the same place? And so when those people are able to tell me, like, no, I want to do something now to change it, I'd be like, okay, let's get started. The other piece of that is I really, really, really encourage my clients to be open. Um, Open in, you may have this list of things of a partner that you've always dreamed of that you wanted. I'm gonna challenge you a little bit. Like, yes, I'm matching on your core values and I absolutely take into account your preferences, but there may be one or two things that I may challenge you on. A big topic is interracial relationships. And I really do try to encourage my clients and my friends in general to be open to dating someone that might be outside of your comfort zone. I'm not saying you have to marry them, but I think that when people at least give them a chance to maybe go on a date, it just kind of opens their perspective a little bit. So those are some of the characteristics of people who will really have a good experience with matchmaking.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. If you know now, now you know. The more liquor you drink, the more better it sounds. So go ahead and pull up some liquor if you haven't done so already. So, what is the plan to expand into other states? Because, like I said, I'm sitting here in Florida, and I know people that are like struggling with dating, and they're just
Yeah.
like, to hell with this, because it's like the dating pool is just bad. It's.
Absolutely. So definitely building my database up, and so that's a couple of different things with my matchmaking business I'll get into. So there's two options to work with me. You can either join my free database or you can become a paying client. So when I'm here talking to you and I'm mentioning a client, this is someone who is paying me and I'm providing this personalized matchmaking service to them. Now, if you want to be a member of my free database, what you're saying to me is, hey, you know what? I'm looking. I don't necessarily want to, for whatever reason, want to sign up as a paying client. But put me in your database. So if you're working with someone who you think I'm a match for, contact me. And so the benefit of being in the database is obviously it's free. You're on my radar. So if I come across someone that I feel like could be a good match for you, I'm automatically going to reach out to you. I put you on my mailing list. So if there's any events or webinars that I have going on, you're automatically included in that. And then, of course, you're getting when if I do introduce you to someone, that person is going to be vetted. And so, to answer your question, really and truly building that database up is when I will feel confident expanding to other states because I want to make sure that before I take a client on, and that's kind of goes back to working with people. I want to make sure that there's someone who is matchable and someone I know that I can match with. Because part of my process is whenever you sign up, I guarantee a certain number of introductions. And so I want to make sure I have enough connections. I know that I can find enough people in the opposite in whatever state you're living in to actually introduce you to, and not only just introduce you to anybody, but someone I feel like would actually truly be a good match.
So there's a such thing as a person that's just unmatchable because I saw an episode of How I Met Your Mother a couple of years ago, and it's like I remember the main character Ted went on there, and it's like the lady, the matchmaking service, they couldn't find nobody for him. I was like, wow, I didn't think that
Yeah,
was possible.
yeah, like, and that's the thing with matchmakers. We have to be very realistic with, like I was telling you, I'm transparent, I'm realistic. And so I'm not going to say that I believe that people don't have someone out there for them. I think everybody can find someone, but I think the challenge is, are you coachable and are you willing to work with someone else in this process? So when someone is talking about, oh, I have this long list of preferences, I'm not open, she has to be this, or this. I'm like, no, because that's not how I work. I'm gonna find you stuff based on your core values and preferences that you've expressed that I feel like realistic. But when you start putting that many, I guess, parameters on a matchmaker, it's hard for us to find a match for you. And then really and truly, who will want to meet you? And then another thing that I try to, we were going back to our little conversation earlier. Another thing I ask people is, would you be okay dating yourself? So you have all these demands, but what are you bringing to the table? And sometimes people aren't really in tune with what they have to offer.
Oh, I was just gonna go there because I see a lot of people, men and women, they'll have a long ass list of things they want in a spot.
Yeah,
Say they got this, they gotta have this credit score, they gotta be working this job,
yeah,
they
yeah,
gotta they gotta have this kind of income, they gotta have a house, they
yeah,
some can't have kids, all of that. And I'm looking at
yeah.
all these standards like, and what are you bringing to the table?
Yep. That is a good question. And again, that's one of the things that I ask people too when I'm working with them. You really have to be real with yourself and think about what you're contributing. And when you notice that there's those gaps, like, oh, you know what? I'm asking for somebody to make six figures, but I'm still at an entry level paying job. Okay, well, is that real? I'm not saying that that disqualifies you from meeting someone with six figures, but I'm just I just want you to think about, is that a really realistic expectation for
Yes, that's real. And I
you?
feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people will be checked because it sounds like you just want somebody to pay your bills, not
Yeah.
somebody to build a long-term relationship with.
Yes, and that's the key. That's really the key. That's what I want people to start thinking about, long-term relationship. What are those qualities that you need? And a lot, I'll give you one: security. Okay, you want security and maybe honesty. These are two qualities that I would say are core. And if that's your preferences, then that's something that absolutely I'm going to respect and take into account. But when you tell me I need a man that's 6'5", or I need a woman that is like a Coke bottle, okay, these are some we may need to reevaluate.
So basically, if they come with you with any physical demands, you gonna tell them straight up they need to reevaluate it.
Physical demands, at its core, I do try to take those into account when they're realistic. If someone has a preference, they're like, I really want to marry, I'll say this, I really want to marry a black man. Okay, that's understandable. I will probably send you, most of your matches will more than likely be black men. Something simple like I want him to be taller than me. Okay, that's a little easier than you telling me that you want someone who's 6'5". So if those physical preferences are kind of realistic, I'm okay with it. The other thing that we can talk about is I also try to make sure that people are realistic with the dating pool. So whenever you start putting parameters and you have this list, you have to realize that you are dwindling down your dating pool for every checkbox you have. So that's another thing I really talk to people about too.
So basically, the more things they want in a person, that just dwindles down their dating pool.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then that's when you have to go back to looking at yourself like, hey, you dwindled down your dating pool to like 30 men. And then with those 30 men who fit these preferences, would they even be interested in you specifically? You
Ooh.
know? Yeah. Yeah. I know I'm getting really real, but like,
No,
I mean,
like,
I'm just trying to be
no, let's keep it all the way real. So that
honest.
way, when people paying you their money, they know
Yeah,
what they expecting. You know
that's
what I'm saying?
true. That's
So,
true.
what would happen if somebody just said this ain't working and demanded a refund?
Yeah, so you know what? I offer people, if the relationship really isn't working, I allow people to get out of their, I don't really want to say a contract. It's like a 6-month commitment. So the way my payment works is you pay an enrollment fee that takes us through the process of where I'm really conducting these interviews. I'm really getting to know you on a deeper level. So that takes about the first month. And then from there, you are paying a monthly fee for me to basically work together and me present you with introductions. So now, say for instance, they work with me for 3 months and they're like, you know what? This really isn't working with me. I don't think I need a matchmaker, or maybe I'm realizing that I need to approach this in a different way, or I'm just not ready. If they give me enough notice period, then I won't charge them from then on out. So there isn't any refunds for something that you've already redeemed, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
like if you're paying for the first month, we've already spent that time. I've already spent that energy getting you matches. So there's no refund at that point. But if you want to stop the process, then you won't be charged going forward.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, at what point do you say you're on your own? You got this because we've basically found you a match. It seems to be working. At what point do you say, okay, you're on your own?
Yeah, so that's a good point. And one of the things that I want to take into account, and I encourage everybody, is there's a lot of things you need to evaluate when you decide to be exclusive. So I'm going to be real. Whenever you meet a match that you like, or even anybody you're dating, don't jump into being exclusive with them right away. That goes to the term where you'll hear people tell you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You go on a date or two and you're infatuated with this person. Okay, cool. Keep talking to them, keep dating them. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you or encourage you to shut your dating search down, because anything could happen. It takes a while to get to know people. And that's why I told you I look at my success rate from a 6-month period, because I don't want people to put all their eggs in one basket too soon. So I do encourage people to continue dating. And so until they're getting to a point where they're like, okay, we've been talking for a while, like we've both had a conversation, we know where we want this to go, we decide to be exclusive. At that point, then I'm like, okay, as long as y'all talked about it, you feel good about this, that's fine. I can understand. You go ahead and good luck with that relationship, and I'm still going to check in with them. So in a way, my relationship never ends, but I definitely don't encourage people to get exclusive too soon.
Oh, I've noticed that a lot because
Yeah.
people they fall victims of social media, which
Yeah.
I know you see it all the time. People you see the Buddha people all on social media. And do you feel like some people will just hop in, will try to talk to you just because they want that same thing and they just want to keep up with them?
Absolutely. And it's funny because right now we're in cuffing season. And so we know what cuffing season is about. It's
Yeah, I
people
can
who,
see.
have been, they've had the summertime, they've been able to get out and enjoy themselves. Maybe not so much this year because of COVID, but typically, people are having a good time during the summer. I'll put it like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
I
right.
honestly thought COVID canceled cuffing season, but I'm still seeing people wind up having quarantine babies.
Oh, absolutely. Because if anything, it's made people get really lonely. And I've had several conversations with people saying that COVID has really solidified the fact that they want a partner or that they want someone. Because when you think about it, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, people were literally shut in their homes for like months. And if you didn't have a companion, that got really lonely really quickly. And so, and I'm not saying that those people are, want love or looking for someone for the wrong reasons, but I think COVID has probably brought to the light that, for people who are by themselves, it's probably solidified, what, I think it is time where I want a partner right now.
Yeah. Now for the ones that do have a partner, I've also noticed that COVID solidified that either you really love this person, y'all need to
Yes.
reconnect, or I can't stand this person, we need to get out. Because I've also
Yep.
seen domestic violence cases going up because everybody's
Yeah.
just stuck at home. So
Unfortunately, that is absolutely true. And we were talking to one of our friends that's an attorney. They were talking about how even divorce rate has gone up. One of my coworkers that I was working with, he had just started dating his girl right before COVID happened, and they were doing good, but then they hit a rough patch, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I this is too much." So I think exactly what you said. It's for the people that are together or have met someone, if you get through COVID, then your relationship is probably pretty solid.
yeah. So now
Yeah.
what do you say to the people that come to you and be like, hey, I need help reconnecting with my husband or reconnecting with my spouse?
Yeah. So when it comes to married relationships, I'm probably going to recommend that you speak to a marriage counselor or a marriage therapist. Just because, when you're dealing with a dating relationship and a marriage relationship, those are different scales. So I know I'm really real with also what I can handle in my mental capacity. So I'm going to refer you to someone who specializes in that if you're married in a committed relationship like that.
Now, speaking of mental capacity, how do you handle it having to try to play superwoman for all these people who they need help finding somebody? How do you hold up?
Yeah, so I really, man, self-care has really become a hot topic over, I'd say, like maybe the past year or two, but it is real. So for me, I have several different outlets. I enjoy reading realistic fiction books. So every night before bed, I read. I do a devote. I'm a Christian, so I try to make sure I'm on YouVersion doing some type of devotional. And then, of course, I have my husband. He's silly and goofy, so sometimes he really helps me because I'm one of those, I can get laser focused. And when I'm working, I'm like, I don't want to talk to you, like be quiet. But he's goofy, and so he kind of makes me interact with him. And so it's really been a blessing that we're kind of opposites in that way because he brings me back down to earth sometimes. So those are my few outlets.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Now, something I didn't ask you, which we're gonna take a little extreme from it. What do you say to people that have sexual preferences, like oh they have to be good in bed or stuff like that? What do you do if you get those kind of questions from people?
Oh man. All right. So those people, that's a legit question. So when we go back to me talking about attachments and not putting all your eggs in one basket and getting exclusive too soon, I'm going to encourage you to abstain from sex for a little bit. So, yes, of course, people want to get in there and talk about their sexual preferences, but I'm like, look, I'm not here for that. I am concerned about you getting someone who is compatible. And as someone who is a Christian, this is something I really have to think about too, because I, in good faith, cannot really encourage people to have sex before marriage. I know it happens, but as for me and my house, I'm not going to encourage that behavior. And I really truly do believe that if you have chemistry with someone and you're compatible with someone, the sexual stuff that will happen.
No, 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 I understand. I respect it.
Yeah,
It's just I know
yeah.
I have a lot of listeners and a lot of
Oh yeah.
followers who don't think like that. You know what I'm
I
saying?
know.
I
I
know,
know.
I know there are a lot of people that just they sometimes they date to just get that on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I know that that's out there. And if that's really what people are worried about, that's where I'm going to, encourage, like I mentioned before, I'm probably not going to take you on as a client because there's apps for that. There are groups for that. Again, I'm really trying to work with people who want to be intentional, who want to find their long-term person, who's trying to find a husband or a wife. And when you think of it in terms of that, like if you have that chemistry and that spark, the sexual compatibility, I really truly believe will come with that. So if you're just looking for a fling or you're worried about are they good in bed, I'd say try the dating app.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
Now, how do you handle people with kids? Because it's like for brothers, now personally, I don't have any kids, but I've known some, and they've mentioned that it seems like as soon as they mention they have one child or one or two kids, but they're taking care of their kids, it's an instant red flag for women. Whereas women, they applaud it for being strong for dating and still having children, but they'll look at a man sideways if a man says, "Oh, I don't date kids," but yet you hear a lot of women say they want to give the time of day to a man with children.
Yeah. So, man, Victor, you asking some good questions. This is a good one too. So in my process, and also for members of my database and in my actual clients, that is one of the big questions, and that's a preference that sometimes I will or will not challenge people on. It's do you have kids, and would you be willing to date someone with kids? Sometimes people are giving me like, hey, you know what? I'd be cool. I'm okay with dating someone with one kid, but maybe not three or four. If I am dating with someone with a kid, I want to make sure that they have a good relationship with their child and there's no drama between them and their child's father or mother. So I hear a lot of different preferences around that. I think again, we have to think about the dating pool that I mentioned earlier. And whenever you say, hey, I don't want to date anyone with any kids, I was like, okay, that's fine. But we also have to think about, you could be limiting yourself. So I'll give them a scenario. I was like, okay, what if I come across this man who, he's all these things, but he may have a kid. Would you still want to meet them? And when I get people thinking about that, they're like, oh, I mean, yeah, I think, I might meet them at that point. So I try to challenge them, not huge. If they tell me that they, don't want anybody with kids, I'm probably not going to go and find someone who has four or five. But there is a little bit of wiggle room that I ask people to have there. And also think that you have to be really willing and set expectations up front because working with people who have kids, like you're not you're dating, but you also have to consider, the person that you're letting have a peek at your life. So there's a lady who I was talking with, and she was kind of talking about how, she at the end of the day, she needs a companion who also would be a good influence on her son. And I was like, that's really, really real because, as singles who may not have kids, it's easier for us to navigate because, we're only thinking about us. We don't have anybody else to think about. But when you have people with kids, they have to think about their families and they have to think about, all of their decisions are impacting their offspring.
Now, how do you coach them up? Because I'm gonna get personal here. It's like I've been out with women with kids, and some of them will tell me straight up on the first date, my kids gotta be involved. That part I understand, but then they get into what they like to do with the kids or their kids this. They're giving too many details about the kids instead of giving details about themselves. Now, how do you
That's
coach
good.
them on how to conduct themselves on going out with dates with somebody who maybe don't have a child?
That's good. I like that question. That's really good. Um, so really and truly, especially working with my clients, I want them to think of this process as something that they're doing for themselves. So absolutely, yes, 100%, you do have to keep your kids in mind when you're dating and in your social life. But I want them to, especially when they're going on dates, I want this to be like, hey, this is you time. This is time, and for the guys as well, this is you time. This is not time where you have to go and talk about your kids. You don't have to go and think about your kids. Just be yourself and enjoy who you're with. I encourage people to be very present on the date. And talk about with that person, and your first dates especially really should be time for you all to start, really getting to know each other and find common interests. I always encourage people to try to laugh about something on a date. So that's kind of how I encourage people with children. Take this time for yourself. And when I mean for yourself, including conversation, talk with your about yourself and about that person you're on a date with. So that's a good question.
That's real. So now
Yeah.
you working on also like maybe having like speed dating events like in the Dallas area, you know what I'm saying, for like people as well, for all you members to just get out there and speed date and mingle and commingle amongst each
Yeah.
other.
Absolutely. That is absolutely on the radar. I'm thinking of probably targeting at the beginning of this coming year, just because I want to see how COVID is playing out. Things do seem to be getting better, but I am putting people's safety at the forefront right now. So before I actually start hosting my own events, I want to make sure people are going to feel safe and we can social distance and follow protocols. Even with like setting up dates now, when I'm talking to clients, I asked them too about, what do you feel comfortable with? Because as you probably noticed, Victor, like some people are still more comfortable with like getting out there and doing certain social activities than others are. So that's something I'm still having to take into account when I'm setting people up too.
Yeah, listen, I live in Florida and they don't care here. It's like certain states, they just don't care. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? They don't
yeah,
feel for the states.
yeah.
So it's like, so now when you're coaching up people, where are you encouraging them to go out on dates? Because I've heard some crazy places, first date, crazy places. So where are you encouraging them to take their first dates or have their first dates?
Yeah, well, especially in the era of COVID, starting off with something that they're comfortable with. Like I have some people who may not be comfortable going inside of restaurants, so I might recommend doing things like a picnic, or meeting in the park. If people have dogs, going to the dog park is, especially for dog lovers, that's something they love doing. Like meeting, a first date at a dog park and having their dogs there together. Going for walks on a trail, especially now that it's fall and the weather is so much nicer than it was in the summertime. Anything outdoors is fun. A lot of festivals, like one of my favorite recommendations, and also one of my favorite places to go on the weekends, is the farmers market. And so if you can hit up those types of areas, there's a lot of, and when you're in situations like that, where you're at like a festival or a farmers market or somewhere there's a lot of vendors or a lot going on, you also have to think about that gives you a lot to talk about too. So you're not just at a restaurant or even on a picnic. If you kind of have to feel comfortable with that person, because it could just be you too. But if you're going out somewhere in public like that where there's other people around, you can people watch, you can talk about the vendors or the different things that they're selling. So those are some of the ones that I encourage right off the bat.
That's real. That's real. Now, do you have an age preference in which you work with people? Because I know at certain ages, like you do you like tell them like you're a little too young to be thinking about getting this serious, or is there just no age limit?
Yeah, I'm not going to say that. Well, everyone that I work with has to be over 21, and that's including joining my free database. Now, I'm not saying I have any age limits, but I will tell you the people who are typically attracted to this type of service are going to be 35 and up, typically. Well, I'll say 35 for the men. Women, I see them as early as their late 20s.
Oh wow, I was.
Yeah.
I guess I'm too young for the service.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I don't have any parameters, but I'm just telling you what people who are typically coming to me are in around those age ranges, because they've seen enough of life and they've been like, yeah, I've tried the dating apps, I've tried to meet people in person. and it's just not working. And also at that age range, these could be people who, like I mentioned earlier, they may have been married before, they may have kids, they're kind of advancing their career. So for different reasons, they're like, I don't have the time, or I'm really just need someone who to help me through this process. Because I've tried it by myself and it's not working out too well.
That's real. So now, who did you learn from before you decided I want to do this for myself?
Oh man. So a lot of research went into it. Look, like you mentioned, they have the Matchmaking Institute. So they have a lot of resources for matchmakers. I've read through a lot of their collateral. I've gone through a lot. Like I have, when I first started deciding to do this, I made a whole list of different matchmakers, and they all have a good bit of information on their site. Some of them have blogs, and then, of course, so I did all this research, and right around the time when I decided to come up with to build my matchmaking business, this Indian matchmaker show on Netflix came out. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was really popular. I guess towards the end of the summer. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to build this business. I need to know what people are seeing on TV about matchmakers. So I started watching Indian Matchmaker. I watched Millionaire Matchmaker, and then different shows, reality shows that matchmakers were in. And I'm not going to say I agree with what all they did or 100%, but I was able to take some tips and tricks and maybe even some communication approaches away from them as well. So it's a lot of different areas, but a lot of reading and a lot of watching.
Mhm. That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
So, what was the biggest thing you like learned from them to like say that you're gonna just incorporate in your services?
Really being transparent and challenging people. I will say that that is the one thing that I've kind of found consistency on when I've watched these resources or when I've read them. Because really and truly, like, especially when people are paying you, there's a expectation that you, like, the customer is always right. I know we've all heard of that. And so it's really easy to do whatever they say, or to, want to bend over backwards to meet their preferences. But that's why at the very beginning, I think it's important. I try to set those expectations like, yes, I'm listening to your preferences. I'm taking note of all these things, but I'm going to challenge you. And then I ask them a step further, is that okay? And whenever they agree that, yes, it's okay if you challenge me, or yes, it's okay if, you may present someone who you think is a good match, but may not meet all of these physical preferences, or, some of even the other values that I say I wanted. And so challenging them, encouraging people to keep an open mind and being transparent are really some of the things that I've taken away from others in the industry.
That's real. So, now have you ever met any other matchmakers who've contacted you to possibly be a mentor or to want to start doing things themselves?
Yeah, well, physically, no, because, and you know what, I'm kind of bummed because the Matchmaking Institute actually has a conference every year. So hopefully next year I'll get to go and network with a lot of matchmakers. But I have been in contact with a few others, just to reach out to them. And the nice thing about the matchmaking industry is we really don't see each other as competitors, because when you think about it, we all have the same goal for our clients. We're trying to match them up. So one matchmaker, when I first started out, she asked me, she's like, hey, I have this lady I'm trying to match for. If you come across anyone you think is a good match, let me know. And so being open and having those types of relationships with other matchmakers is really mutual beneficial. Not just for you, but for our clients, which is really the people that we're trying to help. So that is the one thing I like about the matchmaking industry. It's not like if I see another matchmaker, I view her as my competition. Instead, it's like, oh, how can we partner? How can we potentially help each other if we're looking for a match?
That is what's up. So, do
Yeah.
y'all ever like talk about people that y'all just are having a tough time matching, finding matches for?
Yeah, I think so, because I think that's when you really have to, it's good to have someone to throw ideas off of. I mean, just like if you've had a tough day at work and you're working with someone, a boss who's really difficult, yeah, you're going to go over to your coworker and be like, "Man, how do you deal with this?" Or even still, "Do you have any tips for me?" And in this case, asking, "Hey, do you have any tips? Have you dealt with someone like this before? Or have you come across someone that you think could be a potentially good match?" So absolutely. It's really good to be connected with other people in the industry.
Now, what is the oldest person that's contacted you to be like, "Hey, I need to be I need your services."
Oh, I got someone to join my database who was in their 60s actually. And it's good because I was like, you know what? I never know when I will get a client in their 60s. And that's very real because you think about someone at that age, they probably are toward they at that point they're probably empty nesters. And so, if they were maybe a single parent or they got divorced at some point, they probably are looking to get out in the dating scene again, because they have the time for themselves now. So although they are definitely that's probably the oldest that I've come in contact with, and that someone has interacted with me. But I'm very open because I can completely understand how at that age range you are ready to find a companion.
Now that's real. That's definitely real.
Yeah.
So how do you handle people that just get out of relationships that want to come to you like, "Hey, I'm interested in your services."
Yeah, that's a good question too. One of the things I do have a stipulation: be, you have to be legally divorced. So I have had people contact me in the past who were, let's just say, just separated. And that's not someone I'm going to work with because, again, promoting intentionality. And so I want to make sure that you are legally divorced before I'm presenting people to you because I want to make sure that there is a clear path of what this can lead towards. People who just got out of a long-term relationship that may not have been legally married, those people I really want to do a lot of background understanding of, what do they think went wrong, why do they think they're ready for someone now, what did they learn out of the relationship, to see, because I don't think that there is a threshold. I'm not going to say, oh, after you get out of a long-term relationship you need to wait. I'd say for at least 3 or 4 months. I'm not going to put that on people, but I think it's more of a mental and emotional type thing that, we need to evaluate once you get out of a long term relationship.
That's real because and what do you tell those people that they evaluate them, but they still keep in touch with their exes? Because there are some people that they can't let go of their exes to save their lives.
Yeah, yeah. If it's someone's coming to me and they're just talking about, I'm still communicating with my ex, unless this is someone that you may have a child with and y'all are talking to each other for the purposes of your child, if you're still talking to your ex, that tells me that you aren't quite ready to move on. And even if you're friends, like, and I see that with a lot of people, and I know you probably do too. Oh, we ended things on a good note. We're just going to be friends. Well, I mean, let's be real here. They're your ex. If you're dating a new person, do you think they'd be comfortable with you messaging your ex back and forth? Because there's still going to be feelings there. I mean, feelings don't just disappear once you break up with someone or once y'all to go your separate ways. So to me, if you're still communicating with the ex, then you may not be ready for something intentional, like I'm going to be trying to find you.
That's real. So now how do you
Yeah.
help people deal with like say it's being intentional, they meet the person and it just turns out it don't work out. Now how do you help the person that how do you help them from there? Like if they meet somebody and it just for whatever reason it don't work out. Now how do you work with them? Is there something you need to coach them on or what do you do
Yeah.
with them?
Good question. And so that's actually part of the process. And this is for both parties, once I introduce my client, to a match and they go on a date, I get feedback from both parties. And so sometimes one person may be under the impression that things went well, but the other person may come and tell me, I don't really think I want to see them again. So there's a lot of information that I find out from that feedback. And then when I'm working with my clients, that tells me more about some of those unspoken things that we may not have touched on during my month of getting to know them. So, say for instance, I'll give you an example. Something would be about their dental hygiene. Okay, so I have a client, someone that I'm working with, and we talked about their preferences. We talked about what I'm looking for, but we never really touched on the subject of dental hygiene. So I found a match. They, made an introduction. They met in person, but their teeth weren't in the best shape. Now, it's not something that I mean, I knew they saw pictures, but they still wanted to be like, oh, okay, this is fine. But once they met that person in person, it turned out it was a little worse than what it looked like in the pictures. So that's a good example of, once I get that post date feedback, I'm like, oh, okay. And we're both able to say, oh, okay. So I'm making sure that next time I'm getting you matches that we know have, straight teeth or have good dental hygiene. Um, so once I get that feedback, even if it didn't go well on your introduction or your first date, I'm still able to collect all that data and use that and help tailor my process going forward.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
So what is the process going forward if, like said, it don't work out? How long do you take before you find them another match or get them on another date?
Yeah, so it really depends. So typically my range is about 3 to 4 weeks. But oftentimes what happens is I could potentially have a couple of different people lined up. I'm coming across two or three guys, and I'm like, oh, okay, I think they would both do well. I have my client, she'll go on first date. She may not like him. And then I'll probably reach out to that second guy, like, hey, you know what? I have someone for you. So anywhere between 3 and no more than 4 weeks, I'm typically lining up another date for them.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a quick turnaround. You know what I'm saying? Because and are you also working with them, like giving them feedback on this is what the date
Yeah.
said about you and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some things I do and don't share with the client. I when I get that feedback, if it's constructive and I think it's going to be something that the client needs to know going forward, I'll share it. But sometimes I'll use those as my own personal notes, like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't something that they can change, and this is something that just how this person is. But at least lets me know that okay, I probably don't need to match them with a person that is, for instance, maybe sensitive. So yeah, so it goes both ways. Sometimes I share the feedback and sometimes it's just like good notes for me.
Mm. So now, at what point would you just get after? Would there ever be a point where you're just like, I can't after multiple dates, we just can't find you a match? Would that ever be a point, or you just gonna be like, no, we're gonna find you somebody, or we're not gonna stop?
So I think the important thing there is having a continuous conversation. So I don't just leave my clients out to dry. Like, even though, like I told you, there's that 3 to 4 week turnaround, we're in constant communication. I'm very real with them. If we start off and I'm trying to find them someone who is this type of person, and that's something we talk about, like at the end of that first month period, I tell them my strategy. I tell them, hey, I'm looking for people that fit this, and that. And they kind of say like, yeah, that makes sense, or no, that doesn't. Let's tailor it. So I'm going to be keeping them updated throughout the process. And if we have, let's say, 2 or 3 meetings that don't go well, then at that point I'd set up a meeting and say, hey, let's brainstorm and strategize because there's something here that's off. It could be me. It could be who I'm matching you with. I'm also taking that as a time to get feedback from them, like, hey, what have these people had in common that's missing for you, or what's not doing it for you with the people that you've met. So I think by I wouldn't. I'm not saying I'd ever necessarily cut someone off unless we mutually felt like the timing may not be right. But instead, I try to make sure that we're having conversations and we're pivoting when we need to do that.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. If you don't know now, you know. I hope y'all been enjoying this talk today with Brooke, the matchmaker. You know what I'm saying? So, are you gonna encourage other Black people to get into the matchmaking business?
Absolutely. I really think that it is a good alternative option for us. Other communities do it, other populations do it. Typically, here in the United States, a lot of the people who utilize matchmaking are high net worth, typically white males and some white women. But I really think that it would be great for our community. I think there's a gap. We have the same problems that they do. And I really think that we could benefit from it. And that's why I created this business because I knew that our communities, we need it just like the other communities that have matchmakers.
Yeah, I think we definitely need it, just like
Yeah.
the other communities. And this time, having it, just from my personal, I think having it will hold them accountable on your actions and the kind of people
Yeah.
you're dating. And I feel like this could definitely just hold people accountable and, what I'm saying, not just out here running through people like people in our community like to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and that's what I really want to promote, the intentionality of it. Like, when you are ready, come hit me up. Let me know.
So now, will you just tell a like I said, now, what do people need to have in order before they come to you?
Well, again, they need to kind of do some of that self reflection. Think about, am I really ready for an intentional relationship? Am I ready to commit to this process? And am I ready to be open? And then you come have a conversation with me. And then again, still, before I even charge people, I have what I call a 30-minute discovery call. And that's where I get on there. I talk to them about any of the questions they may have. I outline my process. I see if we gel. Do they like me? Do I feel like I can help them? I want it to be a mutual decision for us to want to work together.
That's real. Now, also, something I should have asked you a little earlier. Now, do you like promote long distance relationships, or do all your relationships have to be in that same city?
Yeah, so that's really going to be up to the client. Some people are specific, like, no, I want someone who is at least no more than an hour away, because that physical companionship and being in the same space with someone is important. And then some people are like, you know what? I don't have any ties to where I'm living. So if I meet someone who's a state over or a couple states over, I can pack up and go if I need to, especially now that a lot of people are moving to remote work. I'm finding that they are a little bit more open to maybe even pursuing relationships that aren't in their same city.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
So now, what can people ultimately get from using your service besides a companion?
Yeah. So I think using my service, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. Because, using me, like I mentioned, I'm your dating concierge. So I'm going to be asking you questions. I'm going to be pushing back on you a little bit. So not only, are you getting a companion out of it, but you're really getting a chance to grow and develop as a person. And then, of course, I'm going to be your friend. Like I said, even once you're done, I'm going to still be with you. You're going to get me as well.
Mhm. And lastly, why do people in the Black community need to give a matchmaker a chance?
Yeah, because I think that we have seen that a lot of dating apps, they're not only are they not catered towards us, but they really don't necessarily work for us either. I hear a lot of people talk about they're getting on a dating apps, and they may come across a handful of Black people, and really and truly, it's not really a lot of people of color on dating apps. So I think that if we start utilizing a matchmaker, we can kind of grow I can have a huge database of people. And when you come to me, I'd be like, man, I already have 15 people in line that I think you'd be good for. So I really think it could be beneficial. And to your point, like you mentioned earlier, also it promote intentionality in our community too.
And lastly, and now for now the people that reach the end of this, they sound like they could be interested. And how much do they need to come up with to get started?
Yeah, so you can get started for $1,000 is my enrollment fee. And from there, it's going to be about 400 a month. So I asked for a 6 month commitment. So you're looking at about a $3,000 package, but only about $1,000 to get started.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you got that kind of money and you're really serious
Yeah.
about finding somebody and you're committed to it, I would encourage you to talk to Ms. Brooke, because I hope after hearing this podcast, my Black folks, y'all like are watching this on YouTube. Y'all like, I need to sign up with her. You know what I'm saying? She's gonna make sure you get your money's worth. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or join my free database. If you don't have the coins for that yet, feel free to join my database.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Hey, Brooke, I want to tell you thank you for joining me today. I know I'm in Florida and you're in Texas. I thank you for taking the time out to come on and talk to people, tell the people about your business, because this is definitely something new in the Black community, and it's
Absolutely.
definitely what we need.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, Victor. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I really hope that this helped our people.
Yes, I hope this helps our people. And if there's anywhere I could help you out anyway, you just let me know. Because like I
Absolutely.
tell everybody, I might be in Florida, but I'm just a DM away. You know what I'm saying? So
Yep,
if you need
absolutely.
some help, like whatever, just let me know. We'll talk about how we can work together. You know what I'm saying? Because where it's all about growth going into 2020
Absolutely.
and in 2021. Us Black creatives, Black business owners, so we
Yep.
definitely got to stick together.
Yep. Now more than ever. Much appreciated.
And much appreciated. And thank you for listening to Liquor Talk. Thank you for watching this. Until next time, remember all your problems are temporary, and there's just to pull it up and keep it moving. Deuces, everybody.